Okay, this method is called Collagraph printing. This uses a plate which is made from mountboard, which is this. The mountboard is then coated in a sealant called shellac. A collagraph is an intaglio printing method, which actually means that the ink that you print with goes under the surface, and relief printing is when the ink goes on top of the surface. So you will use different tools to cut into your plate, if you like, and then it's coated in shellac. Here on the table are some examples of the prints that can be made from collagraph printing. So you can see here you've got a landscape which is made using cutting out from the top layer of the mountboard and using pencils to make indentations into the mountboard. And the same here, we've got different scratched effects. And here is an example of stitching on top of the collagraph print, so you can actually work into them. And here are some examples of different colourways using the same plate, which is this plate. So what we're going to do this morning is to actually prepare your plate, which is your mountboard. Mountboard has a top layer and a bottom layer, so you can take off the top layer and you can add very thin materials to the mountboard to give an effect. So you can use a craft knife and mountboard, and we'll also be using wood glue to stick down anything. So if you're using the craft knife, what you want to do is take off the top layer of the mountboard. So I'll just give an example here. So you can cut a shape into the mountboard, and then using the end of the craft knife you can peel off the top layer, and this will then add a different texture. Okay. I've got some foil here which has been stuck down with wood glue, and I've got parcel tape which has also been stuck down. And you can also use a pencil, and you can create indentation with the pencils. And once the ink goes onto these, the ink will get stuck into that and it will create a texture. What you can then do, once your plate is ready, you then need to shellac it, okay, which works as a sealant, so that you can then reuse the plate over and over again when you're printing. So when you're using the shellac, do it on top of newspaper and then just cover your plate. This will need to be left for at least a day to dry. You can also use wood glue to make a texture on the surface and scratch into the wood glue. So coat it and also do the edges. Make sure every area is covered. And then what you need to do is then leave this to dry for at least a day, and then you're ready for this to be your printing plate. And then we'll be using intaglio printing methods and the roller press to then make multiple prints from your plate. So that is your plate prepared. Okay, the next stage of collagraph printing, once you have prepared your plate, it is now varnished, it is now ready for the inking up process. The inks that we're going to use are etching inks, and they need to be slackened by sunflower oil, and this creates the right texture as they're quite tacky. And the ratio is probably 1 part sunflower oil to 4 parts ink. Okay, so these are etching inks. So you can see here are some inks already slackened with the sunflower oil, And the idea for Collagraph printing is that you cover your plate in the ink with the colour that you want. This can be applied by simply using some cardboard, or if you want to have more detailed colour in sections, then you could apply it with a paintbrush. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to apply it with cardboard. So the idea is that you coat the plate in the ink and then you rub off the excess, and then all the ink goes into all of the areas that you've cut out, the textures that you've created, or the materials that you've stuck on. So I'm going to add the ink now, and you're just going to coat the whole plate in your chosen colour. The etching inks that we've got are in primary colours and also black and white, but these can be mixed. Okay, so you loosely coat it in your inks, and then using newspaper cut up, you're going to scrunch up the newspaper and then you're going to rub off the excess. If you don't want your colours to mix, you may need to rub off the colour in a certain direction. If you're using one colour, it doesn't really matter. But when you're rubbing off the ink, sometimes you can actually create quite an interesting texture which will actually print. So if I was going to rub off the ink in circular motions, that circular pattern might come through in your print, so it can actually affect what you do. This does take some time, and the idea is that you take off all the excess, and what is left is everything that is in any areas that you cut out, added to, and that's what you want to print. And always wear gloves and an apron, as it can get quite messy and it won't come out of your clothes. Okay, as you can see now, the ink is starting to lift off and you can see the materials underneath. So we're nearly there. We're taking off the excess ink. Make sure you do the sides as well, because extra ink might have caught in the sides. The only way you'll know if you've got enough ink taken off is that not a lot will come off on the newspaper. I mean, it should feel quite smooth. Okay, and you can see here the colours have merged together, but I wanted that to happen. Right, okay. The next stage is to dampen some paper. So you can use printing paper or cartridge paper, and you need to dampen it for 10 minutes in submerged water, and then that's ready to then be blotted dry and then ready to be taken over to the print press and put through the roller press for the actual print. Okay, we're now at the roller press, which is a huge, extremely heavy roller, and your print will go through, so you get a really clean finish of a print. And you can do lino printing and mono printing through here. What we're going to do is to start with, you need to protect the actual bed of the roller press. So you need to put a sheet of cartridge paper down first. Then you're going to get your inked up plate, and that goes face up onto the bed. And then once you've blotted your paper that you've dampened, you then take the opposite two corners so it's easier to navigate it over your plate, and then lightly drop it down on top of your plate. This can be trimmed down, so it doesn't matter if it's not exactly straight. And then on top of your dampened paper, you need 2 more sheets of cartridge paper to protect the damp paper, and they get rested on top of that. So then you pull down the felt cover, and then using the handle you pull it through. When you pull it through, it will be quite easy to pull until you get to your plate, and then it will be quite difficult to pull. Right, now we're at the plate. And then once it has gone through, it becomes easier to pull through. So really carefully pull up the felt bed, and then carefully take up the paper, the cartridge paper, which sometimes does leave quite a nice soft looking print, and then lift your dampened paper up. So if you carefully take that off, if it's really damp, the print might stick to it, and then you have your print. Now if you do your print and there's too much ink on your plate, what you can do is you can take a second print, which is called a ghost print. And you can do this with more dampened paper, or you could do it with just cartridge paper. So you lay that over the top, and then another sheet on top of that to protect it. And then you're going to lay the felt bed down, and then pull the roller press through. Sometimes it will make that noise when it's pulled through. And then if you lift it up, then you have your ghost print, which sometimes picks up a lot more detail in the materials that you've actually stuck on or taken away. So then you have a ghost print and your actual print. The beauty of Collagraph printing is because you've covered it in varnish, you can then dampen a paper towel, take off the colour, dry it with another paper towel, and then you can do the inking up process again, and you can try out different colours, different patterns. You could try it out on different papers. So you can reuse it multiple times. And that's it.